Do you look outside and see a need for change? If so, you're in the right place. Welcome to the You Are the Change podcast, where we talk all things sustainability, social justice, and politics, whatever it takes to create change. We're talking to investors, chefs, teachers, doctors, organizers, shop owners, local politicians. If they care about change, I want to talk to them. Folks, buckle up. Once again, welcome to the You Are the Change podcast. Sir, thank you for joining us on the You Are the Change podcast. Again, we've got your book. We've read through it. It's fantastic. And again, just as I've been talking to folks about your book, they've been reading through it. And as we were talking before we started the show here, some of the changes that we're seeing from folks reading the book or just being involved in this has been phenomenal. And that's what we want to have you on the show for, to answer any more questions. But can you introduce yourselves and let folks know how they should know you?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for including me in the program today. My name is Dr. Neal Barnard. I'm on the faculty at the George Washington University School of Medicine here in Washington, D.C., and I head the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, which is a group that does research on how nutrition affects a variety of health issues. We also run a medical clinic here, so people who come in with medical problems, we'll deal with them medically, but we also don't neglect the nutrition side of things. Originally, I'm from Fargo, North Dakota. I come from a long line of cattle ranchers, I have to say, but I learned to make some changes in my own diet, and my family has too.
What made you write this book? Again, I've seen some of the other books you've written. I personally recognize you from What the Health, which is one of the movies I saw that can help me in my transition. But why this book? Why now?
You know, we're really known for dealing with how food can affect things like diabetes and body weight and cholesterol. And we were the group that really showed that a plant-based diet was dramatically better than other diets for tackling type 2 diabetes. We did that with funding from the National Institutes of Health of the US government. However, the reason that I wrote Your Body in Balance was that we made some discoveries, which were that we could go way beyond the basics. It's not just that a healthy diet will help you lose weight or get your cholesterol down or those kinds of things. Tackle diabetes, yes. It goes far beyond that to things that you would never have thought would relate to your meals. I'm talking about things like fertility. I mean, how many couples in their 30s who are dealing with infertility would ever think that it could have to do with what they're eating, or breast cancer or prostate cancer, that these things relate to food, or even mundane things, menstrual cramps and endometriosis and polycystic ovary disease or thyroid conditions, or even your mood. I got so excited when I discovered that we could use foods to control the hormones that control all these other conditions, that I thought I wanted to write an owner's manual for people to be able to put it to work in their lives.
Well, one of the pieces that you talked about, and again, as I went through, and I'll just try to toss some of these questions at you and let you to run with them, but nothing I relate to, but you were talking about tackling PMS pains and pains associated with that, and you were discussing some of the nutritious or some of the items to avoid, nuts, avocados. That surprised me. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I got to say, it was a surprise to me too. I was sitting at my desk one day and the phone rang, and it was a young woman who was calling for help. And you know, many women have some menstrual pain every month, but for about 1 in 10, they are off the scale severe. So you're not going to work that day. And so they will cope with fistfuls of ibuprofen and so forth. But as she was calling and asking for help, and I realized I could give her some painkillers for a couple of days, I thought, we need to do more. We need to stop this from happening next month. And so I suddenly realized that from a different area of research, from the research on breast cancer, we had found that you can control estrogens, the female sex hormones that drive breast cancer risk. And I thought if you can control those, they probably affect menstrual cramps too. So here's what I suggested. I said, let's do this. Would you like to try a low-fat, completely vegan diet? What I mean is a diet with no animal products in it at all. That eliminates all the animal fat. And also keep oils and oily foods like nuts and avocados and salad dressings, keep them to a minimum too. What I was getting at is if you do that, the amount of estrogen, the female sex hormone in the blood, goes down. And with less estrogen, there's not so much in the way of uterine changes over the month, and the cramps are going to calm down. This was an educated guess on my part. It turned out to be a cure for her. And so we then tested it at Georgetown University in the Department of OBGYN with a large group of women. And it works not only for pain, but also for PMS symptoms like bloating and water retention and moodiness. So we got really excited about it because menstrual pain doesn't kill you, but it opened the door to using foods to control all kinds of hormonal conditions, menstrual pain, PMS, endometriosis, fertility issues, and then the things that do kill you, like breast cancer. And so we now have power over all of those things.
Well, it's interesting. One of the pieces you mentioned dairy, and I've been following, and I was just watching a couple of videos before we got online here about your involvement, I think it was with the FDA as far as their dietary guidelines as it relates to dairy. Can you give us a little background on that? Again, my basic understanding is, again, with dairy, we have high saturated fat, there's the hormones in it, and the lactose intolerant, I think you mentioned. So why are we still pushing this product? What is happening that it seems like a terrible product? And I'm going to have you follow up with some of the issues that's causing that you mentioned, but why are we still using this? What's happening here?
Well, you know, back in the 1930s, the 1940s, 1950s, everybody knew you need calcium in your diet. And an industry was there to provide it in the form of milk and yogurt and these kinds of things. What has happened, though, in quite a number of decades is we've discovered several things. Number one is that people can get calcium from all kinds of foods, green leafy vegetables and beans, so you don't need milk for it. Secondly, we've discovered that milk increases the risk of a number of serious conditions. Prostate cancer is one of the big surprises, a very common cancer in men, but the more milk men drink, the more a substance in the blood called IGF-1 is produced, and that's a driver for prostate cancer. I'm being a little bit overly simplistic, but the research has shown quite clearly that milk drinking men are at higher risk. Newer research suggests that breast cancer and cancer of the ovary may also be encouraged by dairy consumption. And then out of the blue, people started to realize that lactose intolerance, the indigestion that comes from the inability to digest milk sugar, well, that's not rare. It's sort of uncommon in white people, maybe 15% of white adults. But for Black adults, it's about 70%. For Asian and Native American adults, similar or more. And so why are we pushing a product that nobody needs and is going to hurt or kill some other people? And the reason is really now, it's not the science anymore, because we know that you can get calcium from other foods. It's really industry just is pushing it. But to its credit, I got to say the dairy industry is diversifying. Every dairy CEO sees the writing on the wall, and they have been seeing the milk sales go down. And so they're diversifying. They're getting into almond milk and soy milk and rice milk and hemp milk. And you look at the dairy case now, this is not your mother's dairy case. There's pea milk, pea protein milk, soy milk, vanilla flavored soy milk, calcium fortified soy milk, rice milk, hemp milk, all these oat milk, all these things. And you can go into Starbucks and say, do you have a non-dairy creamer? And the answer is absolutely. So, you know, I got to hand it to, and the meat industry is the same way. They know that people don't want to have a heart attack, and they're not stupid. So they are starting to diversify as well, not as quickly as they need to. But even Burger King, they have the Whopper. They got the Impossible Whopper, which has no meat in it. So the changes are coming, they're coming fast, and that's good for industry. It is good for the workers. Frankly, it's good for your coronary arteries too.
Yeah, no, it's been an unbelievable change. I mean, we have that conversation with people all the time. Even just in the last 4 to 5 years, you get Burger King, Hardee's. Even obviously, that's not the ideal food source, but the point is that they're taking notice. And I drive all around the Midwest, and I can go into small town Iowa. That Burger King will have the Impossible Whopper. So that shows that there's a demand for it, that people are moving that direction, which is fantastic. One of the questions I want to ask you is it relates to thyroids. Again, I don't understand a lot about this. I just know I've got a couple of really good friends that I've been talking to who really good plant-based diets, even better than mine, so pretty easily better than mine, but they're just not losing weight. They're just not losing weight, and I think that's disheartening to them. They're doing it right. Why is that, do you think? What would cause folks that are on a really good plant-based diet to not be able to lose weight?
Okay, well, a couple things. You mentioned thyroid. Let me get to that second. The first thing is if a person is following a plant-based diet, they almost always lose weight. And if they're not, or if you lose weight and then you hit a plateau, do this. Write down everything you eat for 2 days. Every breakfast, every lunch, every dinner, every snack. Look for contraband. And by contraband, I mean high-fat foods, whether they're from a plant-based source or not. And what you'll discover is that if there are nuts, nut butters like peanut butter, oily foods, fried foods, packaged foods with a lot of grease in them, or avocado and guacamole. Those are delicious things, but they are as high in calories as animal fat is. They're healthier type of fat, but they're not, but they're still calorie packed. Get those out and you're going to lose weight in almost every case. But if thyroid is your issue, you can get tested. Your doctor will do a test called TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone. And if it's high, that means your body's really pushing on the thyroid to get it active. The biggest, well, there's a couple reasons for this. One is just a lack of iodine, which is essential for thyroid hormone. And iodine, back in 1924, the Morton Salt Company marketed iodized salt, and they kind of wiped out iodine deficiency, really, and it was good for the thyroid. But nowadays, modern people are avoiding salt because of its effect on blood pressure. If they have salt, it might be sea salt or Himalayan salt or kosher salt, which are often not iodized unless it's marked on the label. So you may not be giving your thyroid what it needs. So the answer is have 1/3 of a teaspoon of iodized salt every day, or go to a sushi bar. Don't have the fish sushi because that's got other issues, but have the cucumber roll or the sweet potato roll or the asparagus roll. The seaweed happens to be nature's favorite source of iodine. Or if you just said, to heck with it, I'm going to go to health food store and get iodine pills, you can do that. But what you're doing is you're allowing your thyroid to start producing thyroid hormone normally. And for some people, that will help their weight loss. If you are not yet vegan, go vegan. We have anecdotal cases. We don't have good trials on this, but there have been a number of cases of people where they've had other kinds of thyroid conditions that have improved with a plant-based diet. Don't fire your doctor. If you really do have thyroid disease, you want to get a good diagnosis and appropriate treatment.
Well, you mentioned several times avocados and oils, et cetera, et cetera. And I know the answer to this, but like a lot of people, I want to keep asking. And so I hopefully will get the answer I want to hear, that it's okay to eat these things. So please change your answer to this, what I think is not funny. Because last time, for example, we had like fried green tomatoes. I'm like, how do you fry fried green tomatoes without oil? So that's one of my struggles. I know it's a lot of other people's struggles. What is the issue with avocados? I think when I went plant-based, I went from no avocados in my life to an avocado almost every day. How bad are these oils and avocados for you?
Okay, the oils in plant-based foods such as avocados or nuts, the quality of oil is dramatically better. If you look at the fat in, say, dairy products, that's terrible fat. It's a lot. All fats are mixtures. But if you took the fat out of a slice of cheese, it's very largely saturated fat, which raises your cholesterol and is associated with Alzheimer's disease. For the plant-based fats, most of them are not like that. The oil in avocados, the oil in nuts and seeds, not so much saturated fat. However, but my however is this: all fats and oils, no matter where they're from, they have 9 calories in every gram. That's more than twice the calories in, say, carbohydrate, which have only 4. So if you're skinny and you don't have diabetes, you don't have menstrual pain, you don't have any health problems, then I'm going to say for you, a vegan diet is good, and you can have some nuts or some avocado. If you also want to lose weight or reverse diabetes, I would keep the avocado and nuts to a bare minimum also.
You mentioned in the book omega-3s, and this was another surprise to me. And again, I'm in the supplement industry a little bit, and we're always saying fish oil, omega-3s, omega-3s, you need to take your fish oil, omega-3s. And if I read this correctly, you were discussing in the book a connection between omega-3s and prostate cancer. Yeah, can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, people have been pushing fish oil for a long time. Because you can make a lot of money off it. It's inexpensive to make the pills, and you can charge a boatload for them. So industry has been trying to prove that they help your heart or help in other ways. And I have to say the research has been extremely unimpressive. The fish oil capsules do not really protect your heart. They don't seem to do much for, they don't reverse Alzheimer's disease or any of these things people had hoped for. There is, I think, a legitimate open question as to whether people who are very low in omega-3 might be at higher risk for developing Alzheimer's disease, maybe. And so some people will supplement with that in mind, fair enough. But here's the problem. In the course of these research studies, researchers have found a disturbing trend that men with higher levels of omega-3 in their blood, or people supplementing omega-3, men are at higher risk for prostate cancer. Now, at first, those results were just discounted because nobody could figure out a connection, but it kept coming up over and over and over again. So now I have to say, even though we haven't figured out why it is, there clearly is a link. And so what we're now saying is, first of all, don't be taking omega-3 just willy-nilly. However, if you are, a couple things you could do. One is if you just want to know, am I low in omega-3s? That's DHA and EPA. You can get tested. In fact, there are companies like Omega Quant, for example. Go online, they'll send you a test kit, charge you $50 or something like that. You put a drop of blood on a card, you send it in, they'll tell if you're low or high. And then if you're low, you can supplement if you want. If you do supplement, don't supplement with fish oil, because if you go online, you'll see fish oil-based EPA and DHA. But right next to it is the vegan DHA and EPA, which is algal sourced, which is it's taken from algae, which is where the fish get it. It's a cleaner, better, and more ethical source. So there is vegan DHA, vegan EPA. They're perfectly fine. And if you want to do that, that would certainly be a better source.
Something that, again, that comes up quite a bit with folks is mood, depression, anxiety. A lot of people struggle with it. I've struggled with it at times. So when it comes from that standpoint, how is food impacting this? Is food impacting this? And what could we be eating or consuming that could help with some of these problems?
You know, we stumbled into this area by accident, like so many things. We were doing a study on diabetes and weight loss. And we were working with the car insurance company, Geico. And we worked with them. We started working with them because their national headquarters is right near my office in the Washington, D.C. area. It was very successful. We instituted a program so that Geico employees could have a vegan meal at work because the cafeteria would serve them. And every week they could get a class for free on how to do vegan. And I got to tell you, they loved it. They lost weight, their diabetes got better. So we did a much bigger study in 10 different cities. And we found that people in Macon, Georgia and Dallas, Texas, they loved it too. However, we started to discover something else. It wasn't just their diabetes that was getting better and their weight that was getting better, but mood was getting better. And specifically, we used paper and pencil tests that teased out depression and teased out anxiety, and they were both improving. And even job absenteeism was going away. So we started looking around at what other researchers had found, and we discovered really two things. Plant-based diets are quite often associated with better mood, which seems to be partly you're healthier. If you knock off 20 pounds, you're going to feel better. But it's also the high fiber vegetable and fruit rich diet changes the gut microbiome. That's the population of bacteria in your digestive tract. It changes it from unhealthy bacteria, which are fostered by a meaty diet, to healthier bacteria, which are fostered by a plant-based diet. And that change occurs over about a 2-week period. And that feeds back to the brain so that your gut microbiome affects the brain. Also, the diet tends to fight inflammation, which is the production of chemicals by white blood cells that can affect the brain too. So bottom line, a healthy diet doesn't just affect you from the neck down, it also affects you from the neck up. And we were quite delighted to see that. So I should say that if a person is dealing with depression, take it seriously. I mean, suicide is a real risk. But in addition to whatever medical treatments you may be having, there is every reason to follow a healthy diet and lace up your sneakers, get your heart beating. What you'll discover is that these things also have a mood elevating effect as well.
Absolutely. Before we did the podcast, I sent a note out to some folks and asked if they had some questions to ask. And I want to toss one at you here and see if you can help somebody here. It's a 5-year breast cancer survivor. She's lost about 25 pounds since then. She's limited on her cruciferous vegetables due to digestion, she said. She's struggling with the oil. I relate. She's borderline anemic, so she's taking an iron supplement. But it goes to, I guess, a broader question, maybe to her specifically, but in general, what supplements should we be taking? And I know you had mentioned earlier maybe sending the blood into, there's lots of organizations that can give you a full profile on your on your body. I don't know if you need that, but what supplements do you think folks should be taking, maybe for her specifically?
All right, let me tackle that and make it simple. But before we do, if she's having trouble digesting cruciferous vegetables, that means broccoli and cauliflower and kale and collards. Cook them a lot. Cook them till they're soft. Now, if you're at a restaurant, they don't want to do that. They have the idea that broccoli should be a digestive challenge for everybody. Cook it like crazy. Tell them you broke a tooth and you want to cook those really soft. Or if you're at home, cook your broccoli until it's so soft. What you'll discover is you can digest it a lot better. And that's true for Brussels sprouts and the whole other group. And they're a good group to have in your routine because they're high in calcium, they're high in iron. They're a great group to eat. But you asked me about supplements. It's not really rocket science. Number one, take vitamin B12. The amount you need is 2.4 micrograms per day for adults. You need it for healthy nerves, healthy blood. It's not optional, take it. Meat eaters will get some from meat and dairy. Even then, even they may not absorb it very well. I encourage everyone to take vitamin B12. For a vegan, absolutely necessary. Number two, vitamin D. Normally that comes from the sun. If you are outside getting a lot of sun on your face and arms every day, fair enough. But in the Iowa winter, you may not be sunbathing too often. And even in the summer, you might be having a sunscreen that screens out the ultraviolet rays that make vitamin D. You need vitamin D for healthy bones. And if you are not getting regular sunlight, take a supplement. Most doctors nowadays recommend about 2,000 international units a day. I mentioned thyroid. Most people don't need iodine supplements, but once in a while, a person will run low. And there they can talk to their doctor about iodine. That's really it. There are shelves of pills at health food stores, and you don't need any of them. So B12, D, if you come that far, you are miles ahead of just about everybody else.
I've got a good friend I go to the gym with. Been working on him. It's going slow, but we're working on him here. But it's the big debate that you've probably heard a million times, and you probably answered a million times, against the weightlifters that are eating the lean chicken. From their perspective, and I remember that 5 years ago, I was that guy, lean meat, the broccoli. I felt that I was doing the 5 meals a day. I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing as somebody that was active. In the book, though, you talked about lean meat versus a rice-based diet. So I'm sure a lot of folks that are listening that aren't in the plant-based world, they're thinking carbs, 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 avoid, avoid, avoid. I'd rather have this chicken diet. Can you explain the difference and really stress the folks that it does make sense to give up these lean meats? I know that it's tough because they're looking in the mirror. They look, we look great. We look lean. On the outside, it looks physically right. How do you tell them that they're wrong?
Well, first of all, most chicken eaters don't look right in the mirror. If you went around Des Moines and you rounded up everybody who's had any chicken in their diet in the past week and asked them to stand on the scale, the majority are overweight. Many of them are obese. So it is not as if somehow their animal-based diet is really helping them. Now, it's not just the meat that's part of it. Meat is a contributor to it. Meat eaters as a group are substantially heavier than semi-vegetarians or pesco-vegetarians, people who don't eat any meat other than fish, or ovo-lacto-vegetarians or vegans. The people who are consistently the leanest are people who avoid all animal products. And that's true in Europe. It's been shown true in the United States. It's true in randomized clinical trials, and there's zero question that if you take a large group of people, the diet that will keep them leanest is a vegan diet. However, this is not really science. There are guys who think I should have meat because that'll help me stay lean. And it's sort of this primitive idea of, I want to be smart, I'll eat brains. I want to have muscles, so I'll eat muscle. I'll be a caveman who's eating venison or something like that. But keep in mind, if you aspire to be as strong as a bull, keep in mind a bull doesn't eat other bulls. The bull is a vegan. A stallion is a vegan. An elephant is a vegan. They are eating plant foods, and their body has the machinery to extract the essential amino acids from plant foods and build musculature out of them. So you are, whether you like it or not, a great ape in the same category as chimpanzees and gorillas. And the great apes are largely or exclusively herbivores. Now, the thing about carbohydrate, if you look at cultures that ate lots of carbohydrate, Japan, prior to the time when McDonald's arrived in Japan, but 1960s, 1970s, when Japan had really a rice-based diet, they were the thinnest, longest-lived people on the planet. very little diabetes, very little breast cancer. And then when cheese and meat came in with fast foods in the 80s and 90s, they started to gain weight, get diabetes, get all kinds of health problems. Carbohydrate is the fuel for your body. Gasoline fuels your Ferrari. Glucose and carbohydrate fuels your muscles, which is why distance runners carbo load, because they want to build the glycogen in their muscles and in their liver. So where we run into trouble is we butter the bread and we put gravy all over the rice and those kinds of things. It's the fatty toppings that get us into trouble.
I do like gravy on my rice, but one last question, and I'll finish up with you. Again, I appreciate the time. When I was reading through, one of the things I struggled with personally is in the area of the BMI, right? How accurate is this? And and it could be a height thing. I'm 6'6", I'm about 235, somewhere in that range. But I'd like to think I'm in pretty good shape, pretty lean, maybe 6 or 7% body fat. But I get on a BMI and it says I should weigh 192 pounds. And I'm like, I would be a refugee at that stage. How accurate is BMI, or is it just for folks like me that are maybe a little outside the norm that it starts getting a little funky?
Well, the body mass index was invented because, first of all, people were looking at body weight. And they would say, gee, if you're 160 pounds, maybe that's a good body weight, but if you weigh 220, that's a bad body weight. But then people said, well, wait a minute. What if I'm, like you, a really tall person? I need a bigger body weight to be normal. And so the BMI is a really simple way that just takes your weight and adjusts it for how tall you are. And then we put people in different categories. And if you're, and for people who are listening to this, you can go online, plug in BMI calculator, and based on your weight and height, you can figure out what your BMI is. And if you're between 18.5 and 25, that happens to be a body mass index that is associated with lower risk of weight-related problems, certain cancers, heart disease, diabetes, and so forth. However, you're picking on a limitation of it, is that the BMI calculation can't differentiate a fat body from a muscular body. Well, that doesn't really matter, because 99% of people with a high BMI have body fat. They are not, highly trained athletes, but some are. And so if that's the case, you just factor that in and you don't worry about it. But no, the BMI is a good thing. It's a very useful tool, but you don't suspend your common sense. If you've got a lot of musculature that you've been developing and that will distort your BMI, you just take it with a grain of salt.
Fair enough. I guess last question for you, and this is always the big one, and we talked about this before the show started. I'm just convinced, just from friends and interactions with people, we even have another YouTube show called The Vegan and the Meathead, where we're trying to take folks that are meat eaters out to restaurants to show them that we're not just eating plates of broccoli, right? So it's this huge misconception of what we eat. So somebody that wants to adopt a plant-based diet, what do you recommend? What are some thoughts on that?
I would suggest a couple of things. First of all, think through why you want to do this. Do you want to do it because you'd like to lose weight? Fair enough. That's a reasonable thing. Do you want to reverse your diabetes? Maybe just get rid of it. Good idea. Do you have menstrual pain or endometriosis or PCOS or fertility issues, the kinds of things I've discussed in your body in balance? First, be clear why you want to do it. Now, you may just want to do it because your spouse or your family or your partner has these same kinds of issues. That's a good reason too. So a lot of people will do it together. They'll do it as a family. Fair enough. When you're ready, break the change itself into 2 steps. Step 1 takes 7 days. For 7 days, just plan out what you would eat. Think about, okay, I'm going to go to Subway for lunch. Will they make me a vegan sub? The answer is sure. I had dinner at Taco Bell. What do they have? Okay, they got a bean burrito, hold the cheese. Good. For breakfast, what can I have? Oatmeal, topped with blueberries. Just sort out, make a list. What are you going to eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner? So you got 1 week to plan. Then after, and it doesn't take a week, it takes a couple of days, but try different foods. If you have never tasted soy milk or almond milk, go to the store, try it out, plan. Then take 3 weeks and just do it. 100% plant-based, no animal products, don't cheat. Because what you want to do is really take this car around the block, do a test drive. If you do it halfway, you're not going to really see what it'll do. So for 3 weeks, you can do anything. Do it all vegan all the time, but only for 21 days. At the end of that time, 2 things will have happened. First of all, you'll have lost weight. If you have diabetes, your diabetes is improving rapidly just during 21 days. The second thing is your tastes have changed. You've started to embrace a lighter taste, and you'll be surprised that you don't miss other things so much. And if you like where you're going, add another week. But you never have to give up skepticism. You don't have to think it's going to work or it doesn't work. All you do is take the keys, test drive this car, see if you like it.
I lied. I do that on occasion to people like you when I had you hooked here. I have one more question for you, and this is a personal one that I hope you have a quick minute for. And it's in the area of soy. And you've mentioned it a few times, and I know you've answered this question. You've heard it. I was just online last week, and the whole soy debate came up, like, stay away from soy, guys. It's messing with your hormones. But then I was reading through the book. You mentioned soy quite a bit and mentioned using tempeh and tofu, pretty religiously, so to speak. So what are your thoughts on that? Is soy this demon that it's been made out to be, or has it been disproven and we could all move on and start drinking soy milk and having tofu again?
Soy is fine. It's optional. You don't have to have it. We don't necessarily push it, but it's perfectly fine. Back in the 1930s, researchers discovered that soy contains isoflavones. And that freaked everybody out because they will attach to estrogen receptors. And so people imagined that they would cause breast cancer, or if a woman had breast cancer, that it would progress. But research has surprisingly shown exactly the opposite. We now have about 50 studies showing that women consuming the most soy have reduced risk of developing cancer, about 30% reduced. And those women who have had breast cancer in the past have also about a 30% reduction in the likelihood of dying of their cancer. So soy is protective. For men, it has about the same level of protection for prostate cancer, which is good. So no, and if a guy is wondering, will it feminize him or something? No, it doesn't do that at all. And researchers have looked at large populations in East Asia where they consume phenomenal amounts of soy. There is no feminization. There is no impairment of fertility, I can tell you. Again, soy is optional. You don't have to have it, but it does not cause cancer. It does quite the reverse.
Well, again, folks, I appreciate you coming on Your Body in Balance. I'd like you to go check it out. If you sent me some questions, and again, we promoted this before you came on, sir. We're having a contest for a free book giveaway, so we'll be doing that. But I always like to close this with the floor is yours. People that are listening, what would you like them to take away from this? What would you like them to leave with this time?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for listening. But for everybody who has joined in this program and you're hearing this, let me encourage you to think about this. I hope that you found this information useful to you, and I hope you found it enlightening. But I would ask you to do one more thing, and that's to share this information with other people. Share a fact or a recipe from the book or whatever the case may be, because collectively as a country, we're not in the shape we need to be. And I don't just mean that we have weight problems and a higher rate of cancer and heart disease and diabetes than we should have. What I mean is our next generation is not doing so hot. And if we're honest with ourselves, look at the kids as they leave high school and they go home. We have never had a generation before that is this overweight, has this much diabetes and hypertension and lipid problems when they should be in the prime of life. We cannot close our eyes to this. And the answer is not to beat them up and tell them to exercise more and da-da-da-da-da. It all has to do with what should be the easiest thing, and that's food choices. So we've got some choices. If we're having meat chili, let's have a bean chili. If we're having meat sauce on the spaghetti, make it tomato sauce. If you're having pizza tonight, make it cheeseless and throw on the veggies and the nutritional yeast and whatever. When kids learn healthy habits and they learn why, some of them might even become environmentalists. Some of them might even decide they got a heart for animals. Whatever the thing is, all of those are motivators that are going to protect them and protect their kids. So let me ask everybody to take what they've heard here, share it with other people. Let's work together to change this world that we're in.
That's great, folks. Again, Your Body in Balance. Check it out. Again, we'll be having the contest, and we'll be advertising this for the next week, too, so we can help you get a couple copies of that. Doctor, thank you so much for taking the time. I apologize I took more than I asked you for, but I appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks.
You bet. Thank you, sir.
Folks, thank you so much again for joining us on the You Are the Change podcast. Please follow us online at youarethechange.net. Again, that's youarethechange.net to learn about upcoming guests, future speaking engagements, to grab a copy of your book, and to check out other events. Again, youarethechange.net. And if you're involved in sustainability and think you'd be a great guest, please reach out. We'd love to speak with you. Folks, thank you again. Have a great rest of your day.